Hello, today we're taking a look at lesson 36, which is using parallel and perpendicular lines. So just recently we have been working on some lessons dealing with graphing in a whole bunch of different ways and kind of reviewing all of the ways that we can graph a straight line. So again, today we're going to be looking at specifically lines that are parallel to one another and lines that are perpendicular to one another. If you know the slope of a line and a point on the line, you can use the blank formula to write the equation of the line. So if you know the slope and a point, then we can use the point slope formula to write the equation of the line. You can also actually use the slope-intercept form and solve for b, and then you just have to substitute those things back in. Find the slope of the line that crosses 1, 4 and 5, 9. So remember, our slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's going to give me 5 over 4, and it'll just be 5 over 4. Write the equation 3x minus 7y equals 28 in slope-intercept form. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my 3x, because in slope-intercept form that's y equals mx plus b, so y is by itself. I'm going to rewrite my x first. That's plus 28, and then we are going to divide by negative 7. And I've said this before, make sure you divide each term by that number. So if we simplify this, it's going to be y equals 3/7, because the negatives will cancel out, minus 4. And jumping right into it, graphs of parallel and perpendicular slopes. So we want to show that these two lines are parallel to one another. So remember, if things are parallel, they have the same slope. So I'm going to use the slope formula because it says show. I know we can look and see, but if it says show, then we're really trying to prove that those things are parallel. So I'm going to take my points from line 1, and I'm going to use the slope formula. So I'll say m1 for my first line, and that's going to be negative 2 minus 0 all over negative 1 minus negative 3. My second line over here, the blue one, call that m2, is equal to negative 2 minus 1 all over 3 minus 0. So negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2. Negative 1 minus negative 3 turns into a plus, so that's over 2. And that is a slope of negative 1. Our other equation down here, we have negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3, and we have 3 minus 0 is 3, which is also equal to negative 1. So those slopes are the same, so we just showed that those two things are parallel. Now remember, for perpendicular slopes, those are opposite reciprocal. So just an example of that, if we had a slope that was 2, opposite reciprocal would be negative 1/2. So if we take a look at these, and I can actually just show you a different way of doing this. So we have our 2 points, and if you already have the graph, I'm just going to count up 2 and over 1, 2, 3, 4. So that line 1, my m1 is going to be 2 over 4, which is equal to 1/2. And then the other one, m2, if I make a right triangle out of that, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 over 2. So I have down 4 over 2. I know that slope is negative because it's going from left to right, going downward. So that would be negative 2. So those are, in fact, opposite reciprocal. Almost the example that I gave up there. All right, next, if we are writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines, so we want to find the equation of both lines that are parallel and perpendicular to y equals 3x plus 4 that crosses 2, 3. So one, the main thing we're going to pull out of the equation that they give us is that slope. So we'll deal with parallel first. So that means our slope is 3 and our point is 2, 3. So again, I'm going to do this two different ways. The first way, I'm going to use point-slope form because we give a point and a slope. So that would be y minus y1 equals our slope, and then x minus x1. Okay? From here we have to distribute. So that's 3x minus 6. And then we need to add 3 to both sides. So that's y equals 3x minus 3. This line is indeed parallel to the one that they gave us. Now the second way, I don't mind which way you guys use if you find one is easier to deal with, because we're going to end up wanting our equations in slope-intercept form when we're done with them. So if you would like to use the slope-intercept form just to solve everything, that's totally fine. So for perpendicular, I know that my slope is going to be opposite reciprocal, so that's going to be negative 1/3, and still we're going through 2, 3. So I'm just going to use mx plus b. So I'm going to solve for b, and then I'm going to plug in my slope and plug in that b value that I find. So that's going to end up being 3 is equal to negative 1/3 times 2 plus b. Negative 1/3 times 2 is negative 2/3 plus b. Now I have to add 2/3. Now if I'm dealing with that 3, remember this would be equivalent to 9/3. So 9/3 plus 2/3 would be 11/3. So b equals 11/3. And now I just have to plug in my b value and my slope into that slope-intercept form of an equation. So y equals negative 1/3 x plus 11/3 would be our perpendicular line. We got one more in this first video, and again it's just another one like this. And again I'll do this the same way as I did before. So for the parallel, I'll switch them around this time. So I'm going to say 3 is equal to negative 0.5, that's negative 1/2. Plug in my x value, plus b. So I'm solving for b, and then I'm going to plug in my slope and my intercept. So negative 1/2 times negative 1 is equal to 1/2. So that'd be 1/2 plus b. So minus 1/2 minus 1/2. So 3 minus 1/2 is 2.5. And if you want to put it back in decimal form, you can. Otherwise, you could think of this as like 5/2 or something like that. It doesn't really matter to me. So y equals negative 1/2 x plus 5/2. This would be the same as y equals negative 0.5 x plus 2.5. So either of those, and then opposite reciprocal. So our slope is going to be 2. And again, for this one, I'm going to use that point-slope form, and you guys can pick whatever one you want. So that's y minus 3 is equal to 2, x minus negative 1. So that turns into a plus. Distribute. So we get y minus 3 is equal to 2x plus 2. Add 3 to both sides. So we get y equals 2x plus 5. Okay? There is the first video.